Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, brought to you by big4accountingfirms.com. In today's podcast, I wanted to discuss a couple of news items that are a little bit old, but just wanted to talk about them because they're important for people that are going to be working in the Big Four accounting firms and just the economy overall. And the first one I want to talk about is the Deloitte reorganization. The Big Four are once again getting ready for a downturn in the economy, and it's already hit the consulting market, and Deloitte is making moves to address this. And they're going to go through an internal restructuring to deal with this. And this is reportedly the largest reorganization in Deloitte for a decade. And there will be two new units that are created as part of the reorg. One is strategy, risk, and transaction. The other is technology and transformation. And the other two units will be audit and tax, which are the ones that everybody goes into the Big Four for. And what does this mean overall? Well, it's not really that big of a news, but it's every time there's a downturn in the economy, we know that consulting is the first to get cut. And we'll cover that in our second piece of content as well. But the reason that Deloitte is doing this, and it's more relevant to Deloitte, is because Deloitte is the largest Big Four accounting firm, and the reason they got that way is consulting, and they have the most exposure to consulting, so it makes sense for them to be doing this. And previously, they had 5 units, and those units were audit, tax, consulting, risk advisory, and financial advisory. And the CEO made some standard cookie cutter announcement saying that this will position the firm to be stronger in the future. But there's no way to even know that. It's just like a political statement, similar to what the CEO of EY said when they were going to do the restructuring, but then they didn't end up doing it. Big Four accounting firms always end up, the CEOs always say the same things. Like they have cookie cutter templates where they just say everything's repositioning them for strength in the future. But we'll see how this goes. To me, it's just like a cost-cutting type of thing. And the next thing I wanted to discuss was the news out of McKinsey, because that's been in the news a lot, the McKinsey severance. But it's related to consulting, so people might have missed it, where McKinsey in the UK is offering people money to leave the firm. They're offering 9 months of severance pay, and they're also offering people help in finding another job. And it's to avoid bad news of a layoff. And McKinsey in the prior year laid off about 1,400 people, or 3% of their employees. And this is offered to more senior people in the UK. And it's also being reported that this is offered in the US. The details aren't that clear for the US side, but McKinsey is one of the largest consulting firms. And for them to be doing this, it just proves that consulting is really, really struggling. But we've already known that in the Big Four, because the Big Four have done so many layoffs at this point that it's obvious that consulting is hard hit. It doesn't matter what line of consulting you're in, I guess it does, because the thing that's being impacted the most is the M&A, the private equity stuff is all getting hard hit. Any type of consulting that relies on transactions is being hard hit. And the Big Four CEOs have all said they want the interest rates to come back down, and because then transactions will occur because companies will take out more money. But consulting overall gets hit because the discretionary spending at companies is the first thing to go in a downturn, and consulting is the most discretionary. Now, there's obviously pieces within audit and tax that are like consulting and can also get cut, but those are less likely to get cut than consulting. Also, there's a lot of consulting that doesn't rely on regulatory requirements. Some of it does, but most of audit and tax relies on laws that mandate that companies have to file financial statements or file tax returns or file various regulatory forms, and companies have to do that stuff. So it's a lot less, it fluctuates less with the economy, whereas consulting fluctuates more. But those are just a couple of things that I wanted to talk about, as it's just more proof as to the economy is going into a downturn. And this should really make for an interesting year for Deloitte as well, because they're the largest accounting firm, but Big Four accounting firm. But with the downturn in consulting, we'll have to see what happens. But the other Big Four accounting firms also rely on consulting, so most likely they'll still keep that number one spot. But it's going to be an interesting year. But that's the podcast for today. Make sure to follow the podcast, like and subscribe on YouTube, and thanks for listening.